In the heart of the Middle East, a new warning echoes. Iran has issued a bold message directed at both the United States and Israel, accusing them of betrayal. Tehran now says it's ready to respond firmly. But what lies behind these words? A threat or a strategic move in a rising shadow game of power and politics? Let's break down what's really happening and what could come next. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most talked about developments in the Middle East, Iran's latest warning to the United States and Israel. In recent weeks, Iranian officials have made several sharp statements accusing both nations of crossing red lines through intelligence operations and regional alliances. The rhetoric intensified when Tehran described recent moves by Washington and Tel Aviv as acts of betrayal against mutual understandings that once aimed to reduce tensions. This story isn't just about one country's anger. It's about how long-standing geopolitical rivalries are being reshaped. For decades, Iran's relationship with the West, particularly the US, has been defined by mistrust and competing regional interests. Israel, on the other hand, has consistently viewed Iran as a strategic threat. Now, Iran's vow of a strong response is sending waves across diplomatic circles. But what kind of response does Tehran actually military, diplomatic, economic? That's what we'll explore in this detailed breakdown, step by step, to understand what this warning really means and how it could influence global politics, regional security, and international alliances in the weeks ahead. To understand Iran's latest warning, we have to go back decades. The mistrust between Tehran and Washington began long before today's headlines. From the 1979 revolution and hostage crisis to years of sanctions and nuclear negotiations, both nations have lived in a constant cycle of confrontation and cautious diplomacy. For Israel, Iran's growing influence across the Middle East through political alliances in Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen has always been viewed as a direct challenge to its security. Over the past year, new flashpoints have reignited old disputes. U.S. sanctions remain in place. Israel continues intelligence surveillance across the region, and Iran insists it's acting defensively, not aggressively. Each move by one side is seen as provocation by the other. This long history forms the backdrop for the current statement from Tehran. When Iranian officials accuse Washington and Tel Aviv of betrayal, they're referring to what they believe are broken diplomatic assurances, failed negotiations, and covert actions undermining Iran's sovereignty. In short, this conflict isn't born overnight. It's built on 40+ years of mistrust, fear, and political chess. That's why every new warning carries such weight. It reflects not just a week's tension, but generations of unresolved rivalry. Iran's most recent remarks came from senior officials within its foreign ministry. They didn't declare war or threaten direct military action. Instead, they used carefully chosen words: betrayal, response, and consequence. In diplomatic language, these terms are designed to deliver a strong message without crossing the red line of aggression. The statement followed reports of new intelligence cooperation between Israel and the United States, which Iranian media portrayed as an attempt to corner Tehran diplomatically. Experts say the tone of the announcement signals both frustration and strategic calculation. Iran wants to remind its rivals that it still holds leverage through regional alliances, oil exports, and influence in global energy markets. By labeling recent U.S.-Israeli moves as betrayal, Tehran appeals to domestic audiences and regional partners, portraying itself as the victim of double standards. Analysts note that such rhetoric often precedes renewed diplomatic pushes. Iran's leadership understands that bold language grabs headlines and shapes negotiations behind closed doors. This is classic power politics: communicate strength, rally allies, and pressure adversaries to rethink their strategy. The key question now: will this message open doors for new talks or close them entirely? The international community has responded cautiously to Iran's latest statement. Western media outlets are covering the story with measured language, describing it as a strong warning, not an escalation. The United Nations and the European Union have both urged all sides to avoid provocation and focus on diplomacy. Washington has so far avoided direct confrontation, emphasizing its commitment to stability in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Israeli officials have not made formal comments, but regional sources suggest intelligence coordination between Tel Aviv and Washington continues quietly in the background. In Moscow and Beijing, analysts are interpreting Iran's words differently. Both Russia and China have ongoing strategic partnerships with Tehran, particularly in trade, energy, and defense cooperation. For them, this new statement signals an opportunity to support Iran's narrative of independence and resistance to Western pressure. On social media, reactions are polarized. Supporters of Iran see the warning as justified, while critics call it a predictable attempt to gain leverage. The mixed response reflects just how complex this geopolitical triangle has become. For now, every government is watching closely, because even a single misstep could shift the fragile balance that keeps the region from falling into deeper instability. Diplomacy in the Middle East is a game of patience and perception. Iran's warning isn't just about confrontation, it's about positioning. Behind closed doors, countries are constantly negotiating, trading influence for concessions. Iran's message to the US and Israel might be part of a larger diplomatic maneuver designed to gain ground before future talks on sanctions, oil exports, or nuclear limits. Experts say that Tehran has mastered the art of controlled tension. By appearing defiant publicly, it strengthens its hand privately. The phrase "strong response soon" might not mean military action at all. It could refer to new trade deals, diplomatic pressure, or strategic announcements meant to shift media attention. Meanwhile, the US faces its own dilemma. Pushing too hard risks another regional conflict. Backing off might signal weakness to allies like Israel or Saudi Arabia. This balancing act defines Washington's approach. Israel, on the other hand, remains focused on countering Iran's influence near its borders. In this environment, Iran's statement becomes a strategic move, a calculated play in a decades-long diplomatic game. The world sees tension, Tehran sees negotiation leverage. Understanding that difference is the key to reading every new headline that emerges from this volatile region. Across the Middle East, Iran's latest warning has sparked quiet but intense discussion among neighboring governments. In Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, diplomats are monitoring the situation carefully. Many of these nations have recently sought to reduce tensions with Tehran through trade and security dialogues, yet they remain wary of being drawn into larger rivalries involving the US or Israel. Turkey, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates all recognize that instability in the Gulf directly threatens their economies. For them, diplomacy is the only sustainable path. Analysts note that even subtle statements from Iran can shift oil prices, investor confidence, and regional cooperation efforts overnight. At the same time, non-Arab allies like Russia and China continue to strengthen their economic ties with Tehran, presenting alternative markets and investment opportunities. This diversification gives Iran additional resilience against Western pressure. The broader regional response highlights one truth: power in the Middle East no longer flows from military might alone. It's now shaped by alliances, trade, and global perception. Every country knows that rhetoric can quickly escalate, but they also understand that dialogue, even if tense, remains the safest and most strategic route forward. Beyond politics and diplomacy lies the economic core of this standoff. Iran's vast oil and gas reserves make it a central player in global energy security. When Tehran issues a warning to Washington or Tel Aviv, the ripple effect is felt from London's stock markets to Asia's refineries. A single statement can nudge crude prices and influence billions of dollars in daily trade. US sanctions continue to limit Iran's export potential, yet demand for energy, especially from Asian partners, keeps its economy afloat. China's long-term energy agreements with Tehran provide stability and serve as a lifeline when Western restrictions tighten. Meanwhile, investors watch closely. If tensions flare, insurance premiums for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz rise, affecting the cost of every barrel of oil. That risk creates pressure for diplomatic restraint. In this way, the economic dimension acts as both a weapon and a shield. For Iran, financial endurance is key. For the US and Israel, maintaining stability in markets aligns with their own interests. Both sides know that any escalation could backfire economically. This interdependence often forces cooler heads to prevail, reminding the world that commerce can sometimes succeed where politics fails. Modern conflicts aren't just fought with weapons or diplomacy, they're shaped by information. Every headline, every tweet, and every viral clip adds fuel to the narrative. When Iran accuses the US and Israel of betrayal, the story instantly circulates across news channels and social platforms, each framing it differently. In Tehran state media, the tone is defiant and patriotic. In Western outlets, the emphasis is on risk and caution. This split creates two parallel realities, one seen by local audiences, another seen by the world. Public opinion can influence policy more than ever before. A single statement by an official can spark international debate, while an online trend can pressure leaders to act or hold back. For content creators, journalists, and analysts, verifying facts becomes critical. In such a sensitive geopolitical climate, accuracy and tone determine credibility. That's why responsible reporting is vital, not to amplify fear, but to clarify facts. The current moment is a reminder that truth in global politics often depends on perspective. The more carefully we interpret, the closer we come to understanding what really drives each warning, promise, or accusation on the world stage. As tensions cool or rise, there are multiple paths forward. The first and most likely is a new round of indirect diplomacy. Iran's statements might pressure Western nations to reopen limited talks about nuclear commitments or sanctions relief. Such discussions often start quietly through intermediaries like Oman, Qatar, or European envoys. Another possibility is symbolic action, a show of strength without direct confrontation. This could mean large-scale military exercises or publicized alliances meant to demonstrate Iran's influence. These moves make headlines but rarely lead to open conflict. Finally, There's the economic route. Tehran might push for regional trade partnerships that reduce dependency on Western systems, using cooperation with Russia and China as leverage. Each of these strategies represents a different kind of war response, not necessarily aggressive, but strategic. Experts emphasize that Iran's leadership tends to balance rhetoric with pragmatism. Its warnings are often meant to earn respect at the negotiation table, not ignite warfare. As observers, it's essential to separate posturing from policy. The outcome will depend on how both Washington and Tehran measure risk, and how much either side wants to avoid a repeat of past crises. The broader message behind Iran's warning reaches far beyond the Middle East. It reflects a world where traditional alliances are shifting, and new power centers are emerging. The tension between Iran, the US, and Israel mirrors a global pattern. Rival nations testing limits through diplomacy, cyber influence, and economic maneuvering rather than open war. For global audiences, this serves as a lesson in complexity. International politics isn't black and white, it's a series of moves calculated over decades. Iran's strong response soon might not be immediate, but it's part of a larger pattern of signaling strength and negotiating from perceived power. The key takeaway: watch the quiet channels, not just the loud statements. Real diplomacy often happens in silence. As long as major powers understand the cost of escalation, these warnings remain part of a managed, if tense, balance. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next global update. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Iran's warning will lead to new talks or deeper tension? Let's discuss it respectfully.